Can you hear me?
Good morning. How are you?
Good. I just normally have this, make sure this AI doesn't pop up and sort it out. Sorry, I was in the other, the Google Meet popped up for me on my calendar invite. So
Yeah,
I did that. I was like,
honestly, I'm
"Ah."
still getting used to all this techie stuff.
Yeah. And then Zoom didn't want to open. I'm thinking, what's going on today? What is going on?
It's Wednesdays. How have you
Indeed.
been?
Oh, everything that we're going to talk about is so alive in my body right now. So
Mm,
I feel like it's like I think just the energetics of it is going to be super potent today.
mm,
Um,
mm.
which is so good. I'm like, yeah, it's so alive for me that it's like I'm almost nervous to speak about, which is like a really nice edge to be sitting on.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, so um I think I mentioned to you before, this is going to go out on our Women to Watch List podcast. And
Hmm.
ultimately, the premise of the Women to Watch List podcast is actually talking about um the bad behavior of women in our society, um,
Oh,
and how they kind of get away with it through being in the collapsed feminine. And we just talk about that in the context of business, relationships. And I thought it would just be really amazing because it's Men's Health Week this week, and then I believe in Europe it's Father's Day on Sunday, and so I'm going to release it on Father's Day. And I just thought it was a really perfect time to, yeah, to have this conversation. So what I'd love to begin with is just you introducing yourself and telling us who you are and what makes you you, Jacob.
definitely. Can I do one thing before I do that? I just can see this towel hanging on my cupboard in the back of the
Go for
video,
it.
and it's driving me mad. Sorry.
All good, all good.
Awesome. All right. So, would you like me to introduce myself?
Yes, please. So what I would love for you to do
Mm,
is, yes, say who you are, whatever that means for you, and then what makes you you.
mm, mm. Right on. So, I'm stoked to be here. Yeah, my full name's Jacob Alexander Toddkill O'Neill, and I love my name. I adore it. It's something that I'm really proud of. And who am I, or who are you? Right now, I feel like I'm a bit of a mess. This messy version of a man that wants to follow his dreams and a man that wants to be deeply present as a father and a family man. And
Mm,
right now, it feels like I'm holding on to two wild horses running in the opposite direction. Uh,
mm,
and really, and that's what I support men with. I support men with this paradox of wanting to provide and protect, but also wanting to be deeply present, and just the complexity that we're faced with in this modern world right now. Uh, I really like that's what I support men with like simplifying their life so they can actually have what they deeply want.
mm,
And for me, that's always been like if you ask me who I am, I'm very, very simple. I'm a very simple man that wants very, very simple things in
mm.
a very, very complex world that tells me that there's always more to get. And
Mm.
that's been very, very challenging, very,
Yeah,
very challenging, but important to have conversations around and to set the record straight. That's for sure.
yeah. Thank you so much for speaking to that right off the bat, really, the sense of feeling messy. I think one of the things that comes up a lot for men is having to get it right or not being able
Hmm.
to have a trial run. Like something new, they got to get it straight away. No one can see them fall, no one can see them fail. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on this sense of men being in their head, like all by themselves. like you speak to the complexities. This is what I feel like is happening for the men and young boys in our world, is like you said, all this stuff going on around them, but they're actually just in their head all by themselves, like completely alone.
Yeah, that is such a real experience. This idea of like, I just need to figure it out in here before I can let you have access to any of this.
Mm,
And I think there's such a ridiculous amount of pressure that men put on themselves to have it all figured out before they're allowed to present their life to the world.
what do you
And
think that is? Having to have it all figured out.
uh, because failure means death, like,
Mm.
and not
Let's
just
sit with that a minute, because that's such a biggie, right? Failure means death. Yeah. I feel like in
Mm.
the world of the masculine, like that's such a big thing that there's no room for error. And of course, this comes right down to the primordial aspect of providing and preserving and protecting and keeping everyone safe. As out there in the wild, failure literally would have meant death at one point in time, right? Failure to provide or failure to protect would have meant death. Mm.
Correct. And I don't know, I'm a bit of a storyteller and I love anecdotes, but I remember hearing about the culture of tribal men that would go out and hunt. They'd all go out to hunt, and before they returned to the village, they would all gather together and they would share the kill. Whoever got the kill, they would share it amongst the men, so every man had something to come home with
Mm.
and to feel as though he was a provider. Even if he didn't
Mm.
get the kill, he was
Mm.
part of this,
Mm.
I guess, this beautiful culture that was, we all have, today you got the kill, but tomorrow I might get the kill, and we share that. And I think due to the isolation that men feel in this modern world that has taken that, I guess that is labeled masculinity toxic, but not just masculinity, it's the camaraderie that men feel in the company of men. And we've
Mm.
made it, oh, I can't hang out with men too much because then I'm going to become too much of a man.
Mm.
And we deny ourselves that shared, I guess, the shared responsibility of provider, which comes through. If you put all of that weight on your shoulders, it's a lot to carry. If you don't get the kill that day, I've literally just had that this week. We did a little money meeting that we do every week, my
Mm.
wife and I didn't make I had a lot more go out than I had come in, and
Yeah.
I said to her, I said, I feel like I really feel like a fuck up this week. I feel like I'm a huge failure, and I don't know if I can go on. Like, I literally feel like giving up.
Mm.
And like, I had to leave the cafe because I was just about to, I thought I was going to make a scene. Like, I literally felt when you said, who are you? I was like, I'm a fucking hot mess.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Mm.
I'm just receiving you, Jacob. I'm really receiving you. One of the things you've just said that's really kind of present, I feel really pertinent, is this idea of men and community. We have women's circles, we have women in community, and the women are the community creators and the nurturers. And like you said, you know, men had these massive fraternities and, tribes and gatherings to be together, to share the load. Um, I'm a bit of a conspiracy theorist. And part of me is like, I feel like this kind of separating men from the women and separating men from themselves and separating men from each other kind of serves this bigger purpose of men not being able to provide in the way that feels natural and feels wholesome to them. That it does become like a dog eat dog world where they can't actually connect to their brothers because they're out there trying to like catch the last XYZ rather than share it, right? What do you think that does in terms of male friendships and how men relate to themselves?
There's, for me, the common thread in all of the work that I do is this deep mistrust,
Mm.
deep mistrust in other men. Uh, and that then perpetuates, I have to do it all myself. I have to I always have to look over my shoulder. I
Mm.
can't give I can't share my sandwich with the man beside me because he might take the whole thing, or he
Mm.
might he might not ever give that back. There's this beautiful guiding principle in the Andes called irony, which is sacred reciprocity, which is this concept of nothing goes one way. To give is to receive, and to receive is to give.
Mm.
And whenever I tap into that, like I just want to break down in like joyful tears, because I'm like, when we actually give from that place where we know we're giving, that giving is a form of receivership for ourselves, we're never not going to be taken care of.
Mm.
And I think that that the weight, I think there's so many men with little boys inside of them that are so scared that they're not going to be taken care of.
Mm.
And
I'd
like
really love
that's
to pull
soul
back on
crushing.
that. That's so massive, right? Few people
Mm,
who've said that there. Um, I'm just, I knew this was going to be a big conversation. The little boy, right? It's something that comes up a lot. Um, and like in the conversations I have with women, let's say women that are looking for partners, and I just feel like I'm just their mother. It
mm,
comes up a lot. And even in my last relationship, one of the most profound experiences was recognizing, in psychology we call it a dual mothership, where Eddie and I were essentially playing out these childhood patterns in relation to the relationships we couldn't have with our mothers. Both of our mums died when we were in our early 20s.
mm,
And so just that alone was a trauma bond. Both of our parents were alcoholic. So you can only imagine 7 years of us like playing out this need for him to basically nurture me, and vice
mm,
versa. And me, you're such a child, you're such a child. And
mm,
what do you think as a woman? Because what I feel like there is this inherent, and I don't think this is all women at all, but there is like a sort of a resonance of undermining and disrespecting the masculine. Like when I really integrated my relationship to the masculine was when I realized how disrespectful I'd been in just tiny little ways, like minutiae little ways that actually built up to diminishing the self-esteem and the confidence of my partner. I have two boys. Like my boys, just tiny little things that I was like, fuck. Whilst that to me as a woman may not seem like such a big deal, to a man, because of his role and how he sees himself, that could be a massive deal. Like, as you know, like you said, like simply saying you failed. Like
mm.
men's roles in our society are simple but complex. And so it doesn't take much to get it wrong.
100%.
Mm. So
Yes.
what's your
Mm.
what would you say to women in terms of like, because I get this wrong so many times, when I'm wanting to have a chat
If
with my children or with my partner, and especially when it's tenuous.
mm. I think if women really knew how much men wanted to show up for them, if they really knew how important and how majority of our life is around, I would argue every single man that I've spoken to, the biggest thing that brings meaning to his life is service. And having to always get it right it's a harrowing
Mm,
uh it's a torturous weight to carry, because
mm.
service is only found through the practice of development, and development requires some level of
Yeah,
failure and
yeah,
mistake.
yeah.
And like for me, to be loved in my failure is it's unfamiliar,
Mm,
extremely unfamiliar.
mm.
So yeah.
Let me be present with that. I feel like that's a really, let's take a breath on that, right? To be loved in my failure is unfamiliar. Mm,
And that is the little boy for me. It's the
mm,
little boy that wants to do right and get it
mm,
right and earn love.
mm.
Uh,
Think about that, because that seems to be something too for men, right? The earning of X.
yeah, I feel that men get their value and their worth mixed up. I believe in inherent worthiness, that we are all inherently worthy, and that is unchanging. But throughout our life, we develop valuable skills that we give to the world.
Mm.
And unfortunately, I think a lot of men determine their worth based on the amount of value that they can give.
Mm.
And sometimes that doesn't honor the thing that I spoke about, the giving and receiving. We only ever determine our value based on what we can give, not what we can receive. Well, that's been my experience. And for a lot of the men that I've worked with, that's been their experience as well. And I've got a childhood experience that perpetuates the idea that love is something that must be earned. That I get more love when I do the right thing, and I get no love when I do the wrong thing. And that taught me that I had to be perfect. So anytime I would fail, I would want to hide. Anytime that I didn't live up to the expectations of the world, I would hide. And that made me feel ashamed. It made me less open, and it meant that I had to lie, and I became slippery. Especially my wife, Meg, she couldn't. It's like she couldn't access me, and it was because I was terrified that if she found out about the failure, that I would be not necessarily abandoned, but love would be taken away, and she would still be there, but she would now be ruling over me. And it's a terrifying, and that's why I feel that men have this deep fear and deep fear of women around that, because it's like they're the ones that can give love or take it away.
That's big. That's a biggie.
Yeah. And to speak into a relationship is, for me, it's absolutely terrifying to say, hey, love, I feel like if I tell you this, you're going to leave. I feel that, or you're going to use this against me.
Where do you feel is the responsibility for women in that, right? So from a woman's perspective, I totally get what you're saying, because ultimately that's true. We hold the energetic resonance of the relationship, right? And we hold the flow of love coming in, coming out. The masculine holds that space, but we kind of direct the flow. So one of the conversations or kind of talking points often is around, if he doesn't have anything to give, then what's the point of him? And if he can't accept me at my worst, then he can't accept me at my best. And all of these kind of messaging that speaks to men having to be all accepting and just all accepting of anything that a woman throws at him. But if he's to come with an opinion or something that might be objectionable or opposing, the walls come crashing down. And this is something I feel like us as women can take. There's so much space to take responsibility for ourselves in this dynamic. What do you think that looks like?
I think there can be a whole lot more compassion for men. I think that there's a bit of a guilt hangover from the patriarchal. I don't know the right words to use, and I can sometimes get it wrong when it comes to all of the correct terminology. But I think there's a genuine hurt there, and from the feminine around how it was treated. And then the current modern world, if we zoom right out and we see what's happening to the great mother, the great she, Mother Earth, and we see the way that men are taking from her, there's still pain and suffering that is being perpetuated by the masculine. But the weight of that guilt has been passed on to this generation, and we're having to navigate that. So I want to do better. I'm learning, and I don't want to be judged on my actions fully. I want to be acknowledged for my willingness to continue to learn. And I think that a lot of women aren't willing to be compassionate with the actions of men and acknowledge and love his willingness. And that can be and I know women have had struggles with this, because if you love a man's potential but his actions never change, you've been, that hurts. A
And that's
man
a
says he's going to do
dichotomy,
something.
right? Yeah. And that's a dichotomy I think a lot of women face, is loving a man's potential,
Mm-hmm.
and also needing to see that change. How do you feel, like, what do you think is the dynamic between like a healthy relationship in the sense of sacred reciprocity between a man and a woman? Like, what does that look like that feels really wholesome? Like, you and Meg have a beautiful resonance, and which really translates, on social media and things like that. What do you think you guys have cultivated between you that's present for you now?
Like, I can point to the two things that make a relationship good, that make a relationship work, but then there's like this deeper healing aspect of a relationship, which I really feel that we're wanting to get to, that I want to speak to, because that's the actual thing that makes it what it is. Like, there's the polarity and the intimacy. There's the polarity of masculine and feminine, and the intimacy of sameness. We have things that we both like, and we both relate on, and then we have the polarity, which creates the attraction, the passion, and the friction. So we have those. We've cultivated those. Initially, we had intimacy and a bit of reverse polarity. She was quite masculine in her, and how she presented and to the world. I was very go with the flow. Let's see what happens. And we naturally attracted each other through that. There was sameness in the health foods and spirituality and walking that path. And then we sort of repolarized here when we started to do the polarity work and doing our own work on our sexuality. But there's this deeper piece, which I think is like the missing ingredient in so many relationships, which is bringing in this devotion to love, which is such a deep, deep well that when I'm having this messy moment, can my woman, can my wife, my lover, can she actually go deeper than what I'm experiencing and tap into that truth, that love, call it spirit, God, whatever you want, and tap into that and bring that through her into the relationship for me to have a healing experience. And at our wedding, I said, like, all of the beautiful things, and it makes me so emotional, like all of what we've experienced is great, but the most important thing that still fucking blows me away is that she's taught me how to love the parts of myself that I didn't believe were worthy of love. And that, like, gets caught in my throat, because it's like, I didn't know that love could go there. I didn't know that love was I didn't know love could exist, and wrap those parts of me up and make them feel okay. And yeah, I'm having, like, I had a huge moment like that this morning, where I was like, oh, she's loving the part of me that's a fuck up. And that like, you can have your intimacy and your polarity, like those two things that they pale in comparison to this deeply healing experience. And she could easily say, you're acting like a little boy. She could easily push me away and say, oh, that's not a masculine thing to do, to fail. But I think there's such a beautiful texture in a relationship when you can honor each other's inner child, or honor that wound, if whatever the label you want to call. But it's like, you can actually be a parent to your partner's inner child when you engage in that dynamic.
100%.
And I think there's so much. Yeah.
Yeah, I was
I'd
just
love to hear.
like, so many pieces you're reflecting, and it's so beautiful to hear you speak to this, because I think there's two things. There's this desire to, like, reflect a certain type of perfect relationship out there to the world, right? And then there is the depth of, like you say, devotion that happens in the quiet, still moments of your relationship to your partner that no one will ever know or ever see. And when I was initiated into Tantra, our biggest, like, my biggest work was bhakti, which is devotion. And what kept me healing through my relationship with my partner was devotion, was my, when I just wanted to run, when I just wanted to yell and scream and bring the chaos of the feminine, I just had to come back to presence and come back to love. Like that's what I used to have, this mantra, back to love, back to love. Like, how can I be devotional in this moment with him? Yeah, how can I continue to love him? And again, the messaging for women is, if you have to mother him, if you have to parent him, then he's not a man, yada, yada, yada. And in all of my work, with my clients, I'm like, the relationships that work, the relationships that are profound, they serve as healing for each other in their own way. And I really want to make this a thing. I really want it to be okay to heal with and through each other. I think that's the whole purpose of relationships, is to heal through and with.
Yes,
What do you think?
I completely agree. And the piece that I feel that is like really important to understand in these like healing moments of like when you do devote yourself to love, which is greater than the relationship, it's greater than the individual. It's this beautiful, beautiful, unformidable force. That what I've learned is that like you have a responsibility of how you wield that.
Mm,
And same sort of thing. Like if I'm having one of these moments where I'm a mess, like there's no sexual desire there. And it's like, can you actually see me as the little boy and nurture me and love and provide that nurturing touch, that nurturing love, and allow that process to complete before we re-engage as lovers. And
mm,
that is, I think, sometimes can be a little bit confusing for people around the dynamic of like, well, you are my lover, but right now I'm holding you as as the
mm.
little 10-year-old guy that didn't, that
Yeah.
didn't do well at sport. And I think I think understanding the role that you're playing in those moments is really important. Same sort of thing. And I think this is what can be, I think this is really hard in the polarity space right now, in the relationship space, where a lot of men can hold women through deep healing and then sexualize that relationship. And that's a real
Yeah, it's a bit
touchy and
precarious space,
nuance.
right?
Yeah. And I don't know how to
Mm,
speak to that because it's so nuanced. And for me, it's like, there's what happened and then there's what each person has experienced, and I can't speak on anyone else's
yeah.
work that's being done. But for me, like, I have a responsibility that if my woman, and this has happened many times where she is in a process of healing her inner child within our relationship, I have a responsibility not to sexualize that.
Yeah. So powerful. Oh, it's so beautiful to hear you speak to these things, because these are the dynamics that are happening in relationships all the
Mm,
time. So there's a concept we call the erotic mother. And again, as women, this natural eros as women that we hold, and then there's the nurturing aspect, and our initiation and our growth and our maturity as women is, like you say, moving through this archetypical space of, am I the mother now, am I the lover now, where do I sit?
mm,
So if I've noticed, like, when women are not comfortable in expressing these different aspects of themselves, is when things become distorted. And,
mm,
you know, I'm so mindful because it's such a sensitive topic. But one of the things that I'm a massive advocate for as women is taking radical sexual self-responsibility. We hold a strong pull sexually with men, any man, anywhere. And I think this is men's inherent fear of the feminine, is that he knows that she just needs to turn it on a little bit, and he's weakened by that. And that's exactly what's supposed to happen. And I feel like not enough women are taking radical responsibility for their power and authority in how they actually hold and express that
mm,
sexual power. And so, and that could just look like not even knowing that, this is the effect that I have on my partner, or this is the effect that I have on a man. And you know, and really coming to consciousness of where we're at. So there's a little mantra, it's with the feminine, and it's she is one, but there is many of us. And so this is the faces of the feminine, or the archetypes. And I always, when I speak to my female clients, I'm like, what state are you in right now? So we're moving through emotions and sensations all the time. Men differently. Men are responding to the emotions and the sensations that women are often moving through. So as a woman, when we're taking radical responsibility, we know the state we're in right now, and we know which way that flow is going to go. How do you think, how would you like to have that communicated? If you're a man, you know, with you and Meg, and she's noticing she's in a particular archetype or aspect right now, how would you like that to be communicated?
Once again, I think the complexity of it can overwhelm a man who isn't fully immersed in the work of emotional intelligence and I don't even like the word emotional intelligence, it's just like the emotional landscape.
Yeah.
And one of the things I get a lot of guys to look at is the emotional wheel. I'm sure you've seen that.
Yes.
And it's like, that first circle, it's like, oh, that'll do us. We don't need all those other ones. We'll just have sad, happy, angry. That's it. That's all we need, those three, and we're good. So what I love to really hear from Meg is if she's open or if she's closed. That's a great place to start. I think with a woman's process, it's not necessarily that we don't want to be there in it with you and support you. It's that we need a runway. And the first one is like, hey, I'm feeling like to know whether she's open or whether she's closed. Open meaning that life is moving through her, or closed is that she's in resistance to what's moving through her. And normally if she's closed, there's something that that feels a little wobbly. And it's like, okay, cool. I now know where you're at a baseline. And open and closed is one or the, it's very black and white, right? So that instantly gives me a gauge of where we're at, or where you're at in the relationship right now. And from there I can then start to ask more questions and engage, because that almost gives me enough awareness of what's going on within her for me to make a choice whether I choose to lean in or I choose to set a boundary. And maybe it gives me, like I said, that runway to ask a couple of curious questions. And it might actually come down to that she's having a business issue that she needs to speak to her mentor about. And it's not actually my role. So maybe it is like, she's feeling really closed right now. Oh, what's going on, my love? Can you tell me more why you're feeling closed? Oh, I just had this client message me about not wanting to pay her payment. Oh, okay, that really sucks. And then it's like, I will move through that. And it might be a business issue that's not actually that I don't need to get involved with. Yeah. And it might be around a boundary that I need to set instead of me always trying to save her from her fate. So there can be that, for me, is like such a great place to start. Hey, lover, I'm just feeling really closed right now. Oh, amazing. Cool. There's something that wants to move through you that you don't feel safe to feel right now. Cool. Let's start there.
Yeah. Two things. So amazing. So boundaries. Boundaries is one, and not being the savior. The year that I made the most money in my business was the year that my father said no to me for the first time. And my dad had never said no to me, ever. And I don't even know what came over him that particular time. But he said no. And it was the first time I actually felt the boundary of the masculine. And in that, it fortified me as a woman too, somehow. You know, once I got over the initial, oh my God, I can't believe my dad just said no to me. It like really fortified me. And again, shifted my relationship to my father, but also to the masculine. There is a feminine shadow of this expectation or entitlement to the masculine's XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
So when dad said no to me, I felt this entitlement shadow come up, this expectation shadow come up of, you're supposed to provide for me, you're supposed to give to me, you're supposed to protect me, all of these things, all of which are true. But again, if we're not integrated and we're not understanding how we provide for ourselves as women, how we take care of ourselves, how we preserve ourselves as women, we're always outsourcing it to the masculine.
Mm.
How can a woman feel safe to receive the boundary of the masculine? Because it actually used to scare me a lot, the idea of men saying no to me.
Mm. This may be a little controversial, but it's the it's the appropriate level of unsafety that gives you that experience. It's an appropriate level of not feeling safe.
Yes.
So that I think is really important. It's an appropriate, the boundary is in an appropriate way that allows you to feel unsafe, knowing that you actually are safe. And I think that comes down to I think that's my friend Dean. He's a wizard. He lives up the mountain, and he and I have these deep conversations, and we were talking about because initiation is the name of the game for me. I love initiation, discipline, all the doing the thing over and over again. That's boring. I have to force myself to do the discipline stuff, but the initiation, shoot me out of a cannon every day of the week.
Yeah.
So what Dean and I came to, because we were talking about this concept of trauma informed and creating immeasurable amount of safety and giving all of the outcomes and letting people know why they're doing what they're doing and not really ever developing any trust or faith and just living like literally experiencing an initiation through the mind, which to me is it's like trying to eat air. It doesn't work.
Yeah, really.
And we said, you've actually got to kind of believe you're going to, an initiation, you kind of have to actually believe that you're going to die.
And you have to die. So
I think you actually have to have in your head everything.
There's a Sufi initiatory process.
I agree. You have to die.
Die before you die. And this concept of safety. So again, I've worked in the trauma space for the last 10 years, trauma-informed practitioner. So for a long time, like you said, it was so much about creating safety, like exactly like you said. And over the last 3 or 4 years, I actually decided to create a disclaimer in my spaces that I don't guarantee safety. I guarantee that I can hold you in feeling unsafe. And I think for men and women, there has to be agitation for change to occur, which means you're not going to be safe. And I feel like in the personal development world, they've really lauded this idea of it has to be safe, trying to contort the world to just, I see it as, when you go bowling and you've got the things to the side so that the ball doesn't go into the gutter. I feel like psychologically we're trying to pop these side rails off so that we don't experience any kind of upset or trigger. When actually that's exactly what we need to forge us forward to, the initiatory process is the death process, is the, we call it fomentation. It's when the ground starts to decay and break down, and then through that you get the new shoots. And that is so necessary. And I think in modern day society, we have moved away from this messy breakdown, this death and this decay in order to come anew. And I think men are actually inherently really good at tilling the soil. And I think that when women start to be okay with that, the masculines, like I just think about it like with men and like babies, for example, my partner would like chuck the kids up and I would never do that, but he's got it. He knows he's cool, right? And I think this
Mm-hmm.
is also like the part of the masculine leadership, and a woman feeling safe to be led by her man is actually knowing like it's actually so natural for him to kind of create the space to die.
Yeah. Yes, 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 yes. It's so natural for him to have a deep relationship with death and decay.
Mm,
Like if he doesn't have that relationship, then he won't have a gauge of when it's, when to step in and when not to. And that's,
mm,
I think, when you talk about what women need to feel safe, or to feel a to like honor a man's boundaries, like he needs to have a relationship with death, a regular practice. And that relationship with death is really his religion. That's his
mm,
connection to spirit.
mm.
That's his faith.
Yeah, so
And I would argue that there's so many men out there that have been taught that faith is a crock of shit because you can't find it in a textbook. You can't. It's not in the data. And
mm,
man, you can't put heart in a spreadsheet. It doesn't fit. And that for
100%.
me, that for me is the key thing. Is like, and I could probably do with a bit more spreadsheet energy in my life sometimes because I'm a bleeding heart. But I think that a lot of men, what I've learned is that I have really supported a lot of men and been like, hey man, it's okay to trust and back yourself. And if you fail, like I'm here. And I think that's the brotherhood, that's the
Mm,
camaraderie that we're missing, which then creates a more appropriate relationship with risk, with
mm,
danger, and with death and decay, which then allows a man to return home and have more range in his nervous system to be with a woman's natural expression, which is going to be a reflection of the Amazon. It's going to be a reflection of the Pacific Ocean. It's going to be a reflection of the tallest mountain and an active volcano and a beautiful, beautiful lagoon. It's going to be a
mm,
reflection of the nourishment of all the fruits and vegetables that come from the earth. Like when we really train our nervous system to be a space for the range of the feminine,
mm,
and not just the range of the feminine, but how it wants to express itself through our woman, we then become the the appropriate space where we can set boundaries and know what is safe and what is actually unsafe.
mm. I really love that. Appropriate risk taking, appropriate danger, an appropriate relationship to death and decay. Just going back to what you were saying um, about men's relationship to death. So in the Tao, we've got slaying the dragon, which is a man's relationship to his sexual energy. And
Mm,
when he slays the dragon, he's killing off the 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 chaotic frenetic energy where he feels controlled by his sexual and primal urges. And I feel like
mm-hmm,
long time men have held so much shame around their animal body. Like they've tried to cut
mm-hmm,
themselves off from the very natural primal urge to want to fuck. And when men practice, let's say, conscious masturbation, or just really connecting to their animal body, their primal urge, their desire to penetrate, this is where they start to actually have that relationship to death. And what I found
mm,
in my relationship with my partner is, so as a woman, like when I used to feel that primal urge next to my partner, I'd be like, oh God, I have to do something with this energy. And the recent practice that we've started doing is just allowing myself to be next to him whilst I feel this primal urge moving through his body and not do anything. And again, what's happened with that is, and he even said this last night, it's removed the shame for him of this urge, this energy moving through the body all the time. And with that shame going away, he feels more in control of where to direct that energy rather than trying to get rid of it, through masturbation or porn or whatever. He's actually just comfortable having that energy move naturally through his body and dissipating naturally as well. How do you feel like women could feel comfortable with men being in their natural primal drive, right? women are so beautiful. Like I was saying to Eddie last night, I'm like, it must be so hard for you guys. There's beautiful women everywhere you like can turn, you know, getting control
Ah,
of all of your faculties and senses that, you know, how do you do it? And yeah, I'd love to hear
mm,
your thoughts on how can we as women just be comfortable with the fact that men are, you know, we're all animals, and, you know, women, we're sexual beings, and we have permission to actually be sexual beings, whereas men do not have permission to be sexual beings unless a woman gives him permission to. How can a woman feel comfortable in a man claiming his sex, his animal, for himself?
mm. The first thing that the word that pops into my head, and this is a, a loaded word, but it's like, if you believe that you have to give him consent for him to be in that energy, or that you are the gatekeeper of that, you are going to continually emasculate. And like, you might have on the surface, you might have this feminine, you might be in your red dress with the rose in your mouth and dancing around. But if you are still gatekeeping, if you're still the gatekeeper and being like, no, I don't give you no, there's no, and if he does, if you feel him like his fangs, like, and you feel him like salivating, but you
Mm,
still have this rule of like, consent is this formula, and this like
mm,
dry, not this almost like this more natural artwork. If you still, doesn't matter how feminine you are, if you're still playing that lower level, he can't, I'm in control, you are going to miss that piece that you're really, really looking for, which is what Meg and I sort of understand, that the art of feminine surrender.
yeah, I love it. And
And
you've described the archetype of the seductress so well there, because that's what you're speaking to, that women get to play so well in, that they kind of use consent as a lever
mm-hmm,
to be comfortable in their seductress energy or their tease energy. But like you're saying, that dance between you and Meg of
mm,
her feeling your animal, and her feeling,
mm,
allowing that to be the case, and her being open to that. Um,
mm.
that's the sweet spot, I think, in a relationship, that the dance between moving away and coming towards, moving away, coming towards, knowing
Mm.
what that is, and then knowing when to take, right? Mm.
Definitely. And I think there's like the vision that I had, that I see, that I've seen online, is like the woman in the gym lifting in the gym, the tight gym shorts, and she sets the camera up, and the guy walks past, and she like lifts up and arches her back, and like, and he turns and looks, and instantly he's now a pervert. I'm like, do you understand the energy that you're radiating? Like,
Mm.
he's going to feel this pull,
Mm.
and for him to like to turn and direct his awareness toward the feminine energy radiating from you, like, that is a natural occurrence, that is nature in action.
Mm.
And then for him
Mm.
to be shamed for that, he hasn't even taken action, he's just like been drawn into you.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
just responding, right? And like I said, the masculine responds to the feminine.
mm,
And
mm,
and I think this
yeah,
is where it goes awry, when women don't understand, again, their power within a given space, and especially
mm-hmm,
that particular somatic move of arching the back, uh,
mm,
has a very particular resonance with the masculine, to scoop up and hold, like, and there's like the curve as well has a very specific psychological anchor for men as well. So
mm,
there are real biological behaviors and traits for us as women that take men in as it's designed to do.
mm,
And I think that once women start to really understand that, they can actually use that to like really enrich their relationships, and enrich their relationship with their lovers, with their friends, really enrich that with that.
mm,
My favorite thing about the word consent,
mm,
it's con and sent, which is with scent. So with the ability to sensate and to be sensual and to feel, to be consent is about feeling your way into something,
mm,
like say are you open or closed? And
Mm.
do you think that the word consent is now being used as for women? Do you think it's being used as a control mechanism now?
My short answer is yes.
Mm.
I believe so. And I think it is genuine because women are torn between, I want this man to be sanitized and proper and do what he's told. And I
Mm.
also ache for
Mm.
the wild man. I ache to know the man that doesn't follow the rules. I ache for the dangerous man to return home from battle, from the wilderness and come back in with the kill. Like there's a genuine uh confliction going on within women's bodies of like, I want him to do what he's told, but when he doesn't, it's so fucking hot.
Yeah, I remember.
And
Go ahead, darling, go ahead.
yeah, I just think that is like that's a hard thing for women to be taught. You have, your body, your choice, consent, all of these things you're being taught. It's like, okay, well, I need to make sure that this man follows the rules and he knows what's going on so I don't get taken advantage of, because in the past, women have been for
Mm.
thousands of years. I don't deny that, but we get to write a new story.
Yeah, 100%.
We get to write a new story, and we get to have a bit of both, I think, and that's a challenge.
Yeah, and I think that's the new space to play in terms of sexual maturity, feminine maturity, masculine maturity, is actually writing a new script of what the dynamic between us as men and women actually look like. That's outside of, like, I guess, social boundaries. Yeah, one of the aspects of the feminine, like you were speaking to, is this deep yearning to be annihilated by a man, for lack of a better term. And
Yeah, yeah.
and it's the conflict for a woman all the time of this desire to be met really, really deeply. And like we were speaking about death earlier, for a man to meet a woman to the same depth that she wants, she's got to be willing to be annihilated by him, whatever that might look like for the two people. And what I see this conflict with women is like, the conflict between being the good girl and doing what she's told. So, oh God, I would never want a man to do that to me. I could never have that happen. And I would never be so wild and free as to experience sex in XYZ way. So this good girl archetype as a means to kind of virtue signal that she's a good woman. And I think a lot of times we just want the world to know that we're good women doing the right thing. And then the other aspect of ourselves that is, and I love this about the masculine, that men have seen women in ways that other women would never see each other, which I think is so sacred and so special and so beautiful. And this depth of a woman that a man has been able to meet or could meet, that she wants to be met in. And, this sense of trusting each other comes down to respecting each other and holding ourselves responsible and accountable to each other, right? You're a man, you're an animal. This is your role. This is, you're my counterpart, and I respect you as my counterpart. I don't try and control any aspect of you because I don't know it, or I can't feel it, or I can't see it, or I can't control it. I just respect you as my counterpart and vice versa. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but just what you're speaking to just feel like there's like just a new way of relating that can come through when we start to communicate like that with each other.
And like, I think you nailed it with that. Like we get to write a new script. It's like, hey, I trust you. I trust you in this relationship, and I'm going to expose myself in a way that I have never done before. And I trust that you've got me. And as a man, that is fucking terrifying. As a woman, that's terrifying. As a human, that's terrifying, because the modern culture, any sign of vulnerability is seen as weakness. Whereas the moments of vulnerability have been the things where I've had to fucking gather every ounce of strength, not just within me, but I've had to like literally get on my knees and pray.
Yeah.
to all the gods, to any of them. I all of a sudden become,
Yeah.
yeah, very, very, very devout to something greater than myself. And I think that that's where a relationship is really designed to take you, if you let it, is like take you to a place that you never could have gotten yourself.
I have one more question for you. It might be a bit of a controversial question.
Awesome.
Do you think that um do you think that relationships are designed for us to experience God or Christ consciousness or spirit?
Yes, yes, yes.
Mm,
Essentially, it's a yes.
mm,
Um, the thing that I'm like really, really not obsessed with, but I'm really loving is this idea of like grief and like the and what that can bring up and what that requires, whether or not whatever you believe, but like there's this whole religion that has this afterlife where we go and we get to meet all of the loved ones that we've lost.
mm,
you know
mm,
we've whether that's been designed by our own mind or whether that's true or not. Like I'm not here to speak on behalf of the greater
mm,
forces that move this world, but I'm like, there's a whole religion based on, like, if you believe, you get to end up in this amazing place with all of the people that you thought you'd never see again.
mm,
If
mm,
that's not like the power of a relationship, I don't know what is. Like I think that that's I think that's what expansion kind of, is designed to do. It's designed for us to trust in something greater than ourselves, so we can come back and love the ones we love with even more of our heart, with even more of our power, with even more of our essence.
mm,
And yeah, I just see that as the inhale and exhale of life. It's like, let me expand and trust that something greater than me is going to look after me, and then when it does, I can bring more of that into life and give it in a way that is as close to unconditional as possible.
mm. Yeah.
Mm.
Mm. Is there anything you would like to share with the women of the Women to Watch List podcast? Is there anything you'd like to say as a man, as a message, as a love note to women?
I think it's just like know, like, if you knew the depth at which men want to love you, you would never once question his motive. If you knew what was beneath the stories and the beliefs, whether he is the anxious or the avoidant or whatever label we've got for ourselves in the relating place these days, if
Mm,
you knew, like, within his core how deeply he wants to serve you and his community, you would never question his
mm,
motive ever again. That being said, please love and accept him where he's at and call him into his potential and gauge that relationship based on his willingness.
mm.
His willingness is really the essence of him, because
Yeah.
that's where he creates his relationship with spirit, with faith.
Mm,
And if he doesn't want to work with that, then you're never really going to experience the deeper healing or that deeper, like you say, that Christ consciousness coming through. I get it. My perception is that he won't be able to meet you at the depths that you want to be met at, and that's okay. But
mm,
you have a responsibility. You have a responsibility to to give that relationship the honorable death it deserves.
yeah. Ah, stunning. And just to speak to that, just listening to you, I'm just really understanding and receiving the idea that ultimately to be in authentic relationship with other is to believe in something greater than yourself.
Literally. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Mm, mm.
Mm.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Jacob. Like, it's been such an honor
Mm.
to,
Mm.
I feel really, really emotional.
This has
Um,
been the perfect timing for this conversation. I've questioned my entire existence the last 24 hours. So I don't know, just sharing on I sometimes don't believe in my value around relationship